Welcome to the video that I've entitled A Much Too Quick Overview of Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, structured around the history of and influences on the book, as well as 5 key themes of the book: gender as social construct, the performativity of gender, gender as power and oppression, the gender binary, and queer politics. This video was written, produced, and is presented by me, Andrew Chapman. Gender Trouble, written by Judith Butler and published in 1990, is a groundbreaking work in feminist and queer theory that has had a profound impact on academic and social discussions of gender and sexuality. The book challenges the notion that gender is a natural and fixed category, arguing instead that it is a social construct that is created and maintained through repeated performances of gender roles and norms. Through an exploration of the performative nature of gender, Butler exposes the ways in which gender is used to exert power and control over individuals and groups, particularly those who do not conform to traditional gender roles. Gender Trouble was written in the late 1980s and early 1990s, a time of significant social and cultural change. In the United States, the feminist movement of the 1960s and 1970s had brought issues of gender inequality to the forefront of public discourse. The gay rights movement was gaining momentum, with the AIDS epidemic bringing attention to the marginalized status of LGBTQ+ individuals. The emergence of postmodern theory challenged the dominant paradigms of modernity and Enlightenment thinking, leading to a greater emphasis on the social construction of reality. Butler was influenced by a range of thinkers and writers in the development of Gender Trouble. One of the most significant influences on Butler's thinking was Michel Foucault, a French philosopher who explored the ways in which power operates in society. Butler was also influenced by feminist theorists such as Simone de Beauvoir and Monique Wittig, who argued that gender is a social construct. Other key influences on Butler's thinking include Jacques Lacan, Jacques Derrida, and Luce Irigaray. Butler argues that gender is not a natural or inherent trait, but a social construct that is created through repeated performances of gender roles and norms. According to Butler, gender is not an essence that people possess, but a social product that is created and maintained through everyday actions and practices. They argue that gender is not just something that individuals have, but something that they do or enact. A cautionary note. Something being a, quote, social construct does not mean that the thing does not exist or isn't real. To be a social construct just means to be the result of social activity rather than to be natural. A tree is a natural thing rather than a social construct. The U.S. Congress is a social construct rather than a natural thing. But both a tree and the U.S. Congress actually exist, are real. It's simply that without social activity, a tree would still exist, but the U.S. Congress would not. Thus, to say that gender is a social construct is not to say that gender isn't real or doesn't exist, but, instead, that gender is a result of social activity. Butler introduces the idea that gender is performative, meaning that it is not something that individuals possess, but something that they do or enact. In other words, gender is a series of repeated performances that create the illusion of a stable and coherent gender identity. According to Butler, these performances are not just superficial expressions of an underlying gender identity, but are the very substance of gender itself. Butler examines the ways in which gender norms and expectations are used to exert power and control over individuals and groups, particularly those who do not conform to traditional gender roles. They argue that gender is a key site of power relations and that the enforcement of gender norms and expectations serves to maintain the social order and hierarchies of power. Butler critiques the binary gender system of man and woman, arguing that it is exclusionary and oppressive to those who do not fit neatly into one of these categories. They argue that the binary gender system serves to enforce heteronormativity and to marginalize those who do not conform to traditional gender roles. According to Butler, the binary gender system is not only oppressive to transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, but also to women and men who are expected to conform to rigid gender norms. Butler advocates for queer politics as a means of resisting and challenging normative gender categories and creating more inclusive and diverse forms of gender expression. They argue that queer politics is a way of resisting the heteronormative structures of power that underpin traditional gender norms and categories. According to Butler, queer politics involves a shift away from fixed and stable notions of identity towards a more fluid and open understanding of gender and sexuality. Queer politics aims to create spaces of resistance and to challenge the dominant social order through the destabilization of normative gender and sexuality categories. Gender trouble has had a significant impact on feminist and queer theory, as well as on broader discussions of gender and sexuality in the social sciences and humanities. The book helped to establish the concept of gender performativity as a key theoretical framework for understanding the social construction of gender. It has also been influential in shaping debates around transgender and gender nonconforming identities and has contributed to the development of queer theory as a field of study. Gender trouble has also been the subject of criticism, particularly from feminists who argue that Butler's emphasis on the social construction of gender undermines the reality of women's experiences of oppression. Some have also criticized Butler's emphasis on the performative nature of gender, arguing that it downplays the role of biology and individual agency in shaping gender identity. Others have criticized the book's emphasis on queer politics, arguing that it neglects the importance of social institutions and structures in shaping gender and sexuality. In conclusion, Gender Trouble remains a groundbreaking and influential work in feminist theory and queer theory. The book's central themes of gender as a social construct, the performative nature of gender, gender as a site of power and oppression, the limitations of binary gender categories, and queer politics and resistance continue to shape discussions of gender and sexuality in contemporary academic and social contexts. While the book has been subject to criticism, its impact and legacy remain significant, and it continues to be widely read and debated by scholars and activists alike. Thanks for watching this video, which I entitled A Much Too Quick Overview of Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, structured around the history of and influences on the book, as well as 5 key themes of the book: gender as social construct, the performativity of gender, gender as power and oppression, the gender binary, and queer politics. This video was written, produced, and presented by me, Andrew Chapman.